To this day, archaeological teams have unearthed numerous artifacts and phenomena that defy human comprehension. Today, thanks to the advancements of science and technology, humanity has reached the pinnacle of progress. This is undoubtedly true, yet our world still harbors countless mysteries, secrets that leave even seasoned scientists utterly baffled. Among these enigmas, archaeologists have occasionally discovered mummies buried beneath the earth, not of humans, but of Nile crocodiles. At other times, they have unearthed skeletons of individuals who met their end through crucifixion, much like Jesus Christ, before being laid to rest. In today's video, we will showcase some of the most bizarre discoveries made by archaeologists, finds you may very well have never heard of before. The ancient zoo. In the 19th century, two English archaeologists, James and Frederick, were conducting excavations in Egypt. Their digging operations were focused on a desolate open field located 600 kilometers away from Cairo. This site was known as Kem-i-Kaira. Upon commencing their excavation, they stumbled upon a collection of skeletons. These, however, were not human remains, but the skeletons of animals. Their curiosity piqued, they pressed on with their digging. As they continued to excavate, they eventually recovered the skeletons and mummies of more than 1,000 animals from this site. These remains belonged to a diverse array of creatures, including dogs, cats, and crocodiles. They even discovered the skeletons and mummies of numerous predatory beasts, and remarkably, they even unearthed the remains of massive animals, such as elephants. For nearly 2 years thereafter, excavation work continued at the site, with animal skeletons being recovered one after another. While unearthing the mummies of kings and pharaohs from beneath the Egyptian soil is a relatively common occurrence, discovering the skeletons of such a wide variety of animals in a single location was truly an extraordinary and baffling phenomenon. Moreover, the team discovered that many of these animals had been mummified and buried with the utmost care and reverence. The archaeological team was left utterly dumbfounded by this scene. They simply could not fathom why the ancient Egyptians would choose to bury such a vast number of animals in a single concentrated location. After conducting extensive research on this subject, they reached the conclusion that the ancient Egyptians likely established a zoo in the vicinity of the burial grounds. This zoo reportedly housed a diverse array of animals. Whenever an animal died, they would bury it at this very site. Today, we visit zoos for entertainment. However, the existence of such institutions in Egypt dates back 4,000 to 5,000 years. The intriguing question that now arises is, how did the ancient Egyptians conceive and construct a zoo with a mindset so akin to that of the modern era? Were they in fact even more advanced than we are today? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Pot burial, a term signifying internment within a vessel, is a practice associated with Egypt, a nation renowned as one of the most famous and enigmatic places in the annals of ancient history, harboring countless mysteries beneath its soil. Recently, a team of archaeologists made a peculiar discovery in Egypt. While excavating beneath the ground, they unearthed several human remains that had been interred inside earthen vessels. The majority of the skeletons found within the pots belonged to newborn infants. The skeletons of adults, conversely, were discovered in a folded position inside the vessels. Elderly individuals were buried within unusually small pots. For a long time, archaeologists were unable to unravel the mystery behind this unconventional burial custom. Typically, the ancient Egyptians would treat the deceased with special chemicals, wrap them in specific fabrics, place them inside a coffin, and then bury them. However, this marked the first instance where skeletons of the deceased were discovered buried in such a peculiar manner, placed inside small earthen pots. There must undoubtedly be a specific purpose behind this, for the ancient Egyptians were not so foolish to act without reason. Behind every action they took lay hidden some specific secret mystery. Well, after conducting extensive research on these vessels, a particular theory emerged. This theory posits that during that era, members of impoverished families utilized earthen pots as coffins because they lacked the financial means to purchase conventional coffins. However, a newer theory suggests that these vessels were not in fact used by individuals of the lower classes. Rather, these vessels served as symbols of the cycle of life. The earthen jars were intended to represent the mother's womb, signifying the initial stage of the cycle of birth. By interring the deceased within large jars, they sought to convey the belief that the individual's soul would journey to the afterlife by passing through a symbolic maternal womb. The most astonishing aspect of this practice is that all these vessels were of identical size. Since the heads of adults were too large to fit inside these containers, they would use a hammer to break the skull before inserting it into the jar, much in the same way that in Hindu funeral rites, the head of the deceased is struck with a staff during cremation. The body would then be folded and placed in the small vessel. Hidden treasure. Approximately 500 kilometers from the Egyptian city of Cairo lie vast limestone mountains. This mountain range is known as the Valley of Kings. Within these mountains lie countless mysteries and hidden treasures. Indeed, excavation work has been underway for nearly 200 years in an effort to unravel these mysteries. However, in 1922, while the British archaeologist Howard Carter was conducting excavations in the Valley of Kings, his attention was drawn to a step-like structure situated at the foot of the mountain. The moment Howard Carter spotted the first step of the staircase, he immediately commenced excavation work. As they continued to dig, one stair after another began to emerge, fueling his curiosity with every discovery. He was certain of one thing: this staircase was undoubtedly beckoning him towards some profound mystery. Upon completing the excavation, when Howard Carter finally entered the secret chamber hidden beneath the hill, he was so transfixed by what he saw that he could not avert his gaze for even a single moment. Inside this chamber lay a dazzling array of ornaments crafted from gold. He had stumbled upon a treasure trove that would leave the entire world utterly astounded. Every single ornament was made of gold. Furthermore, they discovered a golden coffin, the lid of which alone weighed a staggering 90 kilograms. This coffin belonged to King Tutankhamun, who had ascended to the throne at the tender age of just 8. Crocodile mummies. In el-Begat, an ancient city in Egypt where a team of archaeologists were conducting excavations, their primary objective was to unearth mummies or ancient treasures. However, they were left dumbfounded when they discovered a collection of over 100 mummies of Nile crocodiles, all of which had been preserved with meticulous care. These crocodiles had been mummified approximately 2,000 years ago, yet the archaeologists were utterly unable to unravel the mystery behind why crocodiles, rather than humans, had been chosen for mummification. Further research led to the discovery of certain artifacts within the crocodile coffins that only served to deepen the researchers' perplexity. From that moment on, the mystery surrounding this site began to grow even more profound. The archaeologists found themselves even more intrigued by the inscriptions written on the crocodile coffins. What precisely was the motive behind the ancient Egyptians deciding to mummify crocodiles? What was the true purpose lying behind this practice? The answers to all these questions were inscribed on the surfaces of the crocodile coffins. Regrettably, however, due to the extreme antiquity of the language, scholars have been unable to accurately decipher these messages. To this day, this phenomenon remains an unsolved mystery. After conducting extensive research, some scholars have posited that the ancient Egyptians regarded crocodiles as deities. In that era, they created many statues featuring heads resembling those of crocodiles, while the lower bodies were human-like. Moreover, the ancient Egyptians also worshipped cats. During excavations, teams of archaeologists discovered numerous mummies that belonged to cats. Just as they did with crocodiles, they mummified these animals with great care. The bastet was a specific type of cat that they revered as a deity. Roman crucifixion. During excavations in Rome, a team of archaeologists discovered a skeleton belonging to an individual who had been executed by crucifixion. Nails were found driven through the individual's hands and feet, precisely the manner in which Jesus was crucified. According to experts, the individual was likely a slave, estimated to be between 25 and 30 years of age. Based on the slender bones of his legs, researchers concluded that the individual had been kept bound in iron chains for a prolonged period prior to his death. David Ingham, an English archaeologist who led the excavation at the site, was the one to discover the crucified skeleton. According to him, this form of punishment was extremely common in ancient Rome, as far back as 3,000 years ago. As they continued excavating the site, they uncovered approximately 48 additional crucified skeletons. After conducting research on these remains, the researchers suggested that these individuals were likely local slaves, people who had, at some point, been purchased and brought in from other lands. They noted that during that era, these slaves were subjected to grueling labor and were even kept bound in chains. In fact, the archaeologists discovered the ruins of an ancient factory situated right next to the burial ground. It is believed that slaves were compelled to manufacture soap or various household goods within this facility. Furthermore, any slaves who became injured or were no longer able to perform their duties effectively were punished by crucifixion at this site and subsequently buried in the adjacent cemetery. Colored coffins. Historians and archaeologists, working in collaboration, frequently discover mummies during their expeditions in Egypt. However, in 2019, a team of archaeologists conducting excavations in the Egyptian city of Luxor discovered a cache of 20 coffins, a find that left everyone baffled. You would be surprised to learn that these coffins were adorned with exquisite designs executed through painting. These coffins date back approximately 3,000 years, yet their colors have not faded in the slightest. The red, green, yellow, and black pigments on the coffins remain vividly distinct. After conducting extensive research on the artifacts, researchers concluded that these coffins belonged to ancient Egyptian priests. The local populace held these priests in high esteem. Consequently, upon the priest's passing, the people would adorn their coffins with vibrant, colorful paintings. Moreover, the ancient Egyptians were not merely masters at decorating royal tombs or constructing pyramids. They were masters of virtually every craft. A prime example of this mastery can be found in Del El Medina, Egypt. Today, tattooing the body is widely regarded as a modern fashion trend. However, you might be surprised to learn that the ancient Egyptians, too, adorned their bodies with tattoos. Archaeologists at Del El Medina discovered 7 mummies bearing tattoos on their bodies. In fact, One of these mummies features more than 30 tattoos. According to the archaeologists, no mummies bearing tattoos had ever been discovered prior to this find. Yet, upon examining these 7 mummies, they were compelled to acknowledge that the ancient Egyptians were far more modern, even by today's standards. Moreover, tattoos held significant importance for them during that era. Friends, please let us know in the comments which of these archaeological discoveries you found most astonishing. That is all for today. For now, I bid you farewell. We shall meet again in the next episode.